So in mine, I hope it doesn't come across this way, but I think I'm going to be a little bit more selfish in mine, just in talking about some of the real impacts that it's actually had on my life and personally as well. And I love what Irene said about how in a lot of times in churches, you've got the senior pastor and, you've got all these people, but they don't actually kind of get down on your level and invest in you. And that has been my experience in church, that sometimes I'm like, I feel like I have, all these gifts or talents that I want to use, but no one will actually invest in you. So I think this has been a real blessing in that area, that whether it's like just the little groups that we have, the wider group, whether it's some of the pastors or even Rachel's mentors, that it's people who go, hey, I see you, I see that you have potential, and I actually want to invest time into you. So that's been something that's been a really big part of this meeting. And I'll just make sure I cover the few key things. One thing as well that has been really beneficial for me is as well just like the covering. I think there's a real blessing in having the wider leadership group, whether it's so many mature believers in their faith to all have their different perspectives and teaching. Also the one-on-one with Rach has been such a blessing in terms of someone who just wants to support you, to love you, just to do this journey alongside you as well, and not to come in and squash you, but to really build up this next generation as well. And I'm sure everyone else has felt like that too. But you hear verses about how, or you hear you hear people talk about how the next generation coming up, they should stand on our shoulders and things like that. But you don't actually see that in church much, where we genuinely want to equip you and see you rising up as leaders. So that's something that I've really loved. What else did I write as well? One thing, even just understanding more the actual vision and mission for New Hope is something that has been really beneficial for me, because it's hard to be a leader and get behind something when you don't actually understand what you're getting behind. So in some churches, if it's more about getting the numbers or building people up on different teams or just serving in that kind of way, I think for New Hope, it's been a real blessing to me to go, a big part of what we want to do is discipleship and reaching the homeless and things like that it's like, great, I see where I'm going and I want that, and I can choose to get behind that instead of just kind of scrambling a little bit. What else did I want to cover? I think another thing, and I kind of touched on it a bit before, but it's just the understanding of spiritual gifts as well. And we all have our individual gifts, but there's something really beautiful about being able to go, these are my gifts that God has given me, and I can use those without having to look at like Katie's gifts or like Paula's gifts and go, I wish I had those ones, or I'm jealous of that. And it's no longer kind of looking to the left and right of, I see that someone does this really well and I just want to do that. But it's going, these are the gifts that you have. Yeah. How can I actually walk that out? And how can I just be just like thankful for the gifts that God has given us all individually as well. So that's something that I've really valued in that teaching, and I feel a lot more equipped to now. It's like we've been in the nest, which has been really lovely, and now it's like Rachel's trying to like kick us all out, and I'm like, I'm not ready, but it's also it's that like, oh, this doesn't feel nice, but it's like, all right, let's go. Like we've done a lot of the groundwork, and I think for me, I don't feel like I've had many victories this year. I think it's been a year of just being faithful but not seeing much fruit. But I think as hard as those years can be, sometimes it's really good just to go, even when I'm not seeing the fruit of things, like I'm just being faithful in this and knowing that God will bring that when it comes as well. So yeah, that's been something good. And then I think that's the main things. Oh yeah, and then the last thing as well, even just for me personally, and Rach, you've been such a massive part of this, but I think this year has been a really big year of healing emotionally, spiritually, and having a mentor who's not just, oh yeah, I'll mentor you kind of one week and how you doing, kind of whatever, but someone to really invest who genuinely cares, to actually come alongside you and to be spirit-led, that in the weeks where I just needed to have a bit of a cry and just, here's all this stuff, my head's in a mess, and for you to have already come prepared, knowing that I would need that with a framework to help me work through it, and things like that, and just the structure that I think this has brought us on. I personally have found that it's like the spiritual maturity and emotional has been really big as well. So yeah.
Excellent.
I think